Welcome, class. Today, we've got a very special biology explainer where we are going to completely dissect the fascinating anatomical machinery of human mammary glands. I am absolutely thrilled to be your guide as we put on our professor hats and look under the biological hood. We're going to explore everything from some pretty wild evolutionary quirks all the way to the dynamic factory of milk production, breaking down exactly how this incredible system operates. Here's the roadmap for today's lecture. We'll be hitting evolutionary origins, anatomy of the breast, the milk pathway, the hormones behind the scenes, and finally, your exam key takeaways. Let's just dive right in. Section 1. Evolutionary origins. Let's start with a really broad question to set the stage for us. Biologically speaking, what truly defines a mammal? Well, it's right there in the name. The mammary glands. And you'll definitely want to write this fascinating fact down. Mammary glands are actually modified sweat glands. What's really cool is the specific function of this adaptation. Around the areola, the darker pigmented skin, these specialized glands produce an oily secretion. Why? Well, to prevent dryness and cracking. Without this built-in biological lubrication, the skin would easily tear during nursing. It's just a brilliantly simple evolutionary defense mechanism. And we can really see this evolution in action when we compare branches of the mammalian family tree. Humans, as placental mammals, deliver milk through a highly developed structure ending in a nipple. But then, look at primitive egg-laying mammals like the duck-billed platypus. They have mammary glands, they produce milk, but they have absolutely zero nipples. Instead, the milk just kind of secretes directly onto their skin and fur for the young to lap up. It is literally mind-blowing to think about a mammal essentially sweating milk, right? It really puts our specific anatomy into perspective on the evolutionary timeline. Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of the Breast. All right, let's grab our scalpels, metaphorically speaking, and look under the surface to understand the foundation of this biological structure. Time to see how this factory is built from the inside out. If you're asked to draw a deep to superficial cross-section, you have to map these exact layers to ace your exam. Starting deep inside, we have the ribs, or the costa. Right between those ribs sit your intercostal muscles. Resting directly on top of the ribs is a large, powerful chest muscle called the pectoralis major, and it's firmly upon this pectoralis major muscle that the mammary gland itself sits. That's the core structural foundation you absolutely need to visualize. Now, zooming into the breast itself, it's built from three distinct tissue components. First up, the glandular part. This is the active machinery handling the actual secretion of milk. Second, the fibrous part, which acts as the scaffolding to provide essential structural support. And third, the adipose, or fat part. The really crucial takeaway here is that the variable adipose fat dictates the overall size, while the glandular tissue is doing the actual biological heavy lifting. Section 3, the milk production pathway. Let's trace the dynamic journey of a single drop of milk through this biological factory. Imagine we're following a product straight down a complex assembly line. Think of the alveoli as the core manufacturing machines of our factory. Inside each breast, the glandular tissue is neatly organized into 15 to 20 distinct production zones, which we call mammary lobes. Tucked inside each of these lobes are clusters of highly specialized cells, the alveoli. This is ground zero. This is exactly where the milk is actively synthesized and secreted. And this step-by-step conveyor belt sequence right here is a massive exam question, so pay attention. We track the milk from its creation to its release point. From the alveoli, milk flows into small vessels called mammary tubules. Those tubules join forces to form a wider mammary duct. Multiple ducts then merge into a wider basin called the ampulla, before finally narrowing into the lactiferous duct, which opens to the outside. It's a continuous, elegant funneling system. Clinically speaking, though, if milk gets backed up in these ducts, it can lead to a really painful inflammation and infection known as mastitis. It's a super common condition you should definitely be aware of. I want to pause on a key piece of our factory's logistics, the ampulla, also known as the lactiferous sinus. Think of this as a swollen, temporary storage warehouse. Before shipping out through that lactiferous duct, the milk just sits temporarily right here. It's nature's way of making sure there's a ready supply available right near the exit point the second nursing begins. Section 4, Hormones Behind the Scenes. Okay, let's dive into the chemical project managers running this entire biological facility. Without these hormonal directors, the whole factory would just sit completely idle. But I want to test the class before we reveal the cheat sheet. Do you know which hormone actually causes the ejection of the milk? Think about it.
It's a classic trick question on biology exams to confuse the hormone that makes the milk with the one that pushes it out.
So, memorize this vital matrix. Let's look at how they change breast tissue across different life stages. At puberty, estrogen steps in as the master builder, developing the duct system, the glandular part, and the adipose tissue. Progesterone then handles multiplying those alveoli cells. Later, during lactation, prolactin acts as your production manager, actively commanding the alveoli to produce the milk. But how do they know when to work? Well, it's a brilliant biological feedback loop. Infant suckling stimulates nerve endings, which signal the brain to release oxytocin. And it's oxytocin that triggers the physical ejection of the milk out of the factory. Prolactin produces, oxytocin ejects. Never mix those two up.
Section 5. Biology Exam Key Takeaways. Let's wrap up today's masterclass with a high-yield summary tailored perfectly for your college biology tests. If you've been taking notes, this is absolutely where you pull out the highlighters. These rapid-fire points represent the most testable concepts from today's explainer. First, remember the anatomy, exactly 15 to 20 mammary lobes per breast. Second, the origin, they are modified sweat glands. Third, the factory floor, the alveoli are the specific cellular machines secreting the milk. And finally, that dual hormonal control loop. Prolactin produces the milk while oxytocin ejects it. Master these, and you've officially mastered the fundamental biology of this system. I am going to leave you with a slightly provocative thought to chew on before our next explainer. We just saw how hormones like estrogen and progesterone manage the entire architecture of the breast. But how do these exact same chemical directors completely change focus inside the ovaries to build the very foundation of human life? That incredible process of oogenesis is exactly what we're dissecting next time. Until then, keep questioning, keep studying, and I'll see you in the next class.